Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus Football. My name is Daniel Dopp, joined by Stephania Bell and Field Yates. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. Guys, we have a huge show in front of us today. We've got a massive injury report. We've got Thursday Night Football. We've got our part 2 of our Week 4 preview. Field and I did part 1 yesterday on Thursday's show, so go check that out if you have not listened to it. But first and foremost, guys, how was your Thursday night?
Not as good as yours.
Yeah, Daniel, I noticed that you're wearing a hoodie.
Oh, yeah, I am wearing a hoodie. Yeah.
What's on the hoodie?
There's a Lions. There's a
Detroit Lions,
logo
and you're also
underneath.
wearing a jersey over that.
Aiden Hutchinson, yeah, my dude Hutch. He's pretty good at football, Field.
He is. Do you thank your lucky stars? Is that the right phrasing and terminology?
Single day for that man.
For the fact that he did not go number 1 overall last year? We need a 30 for 30 on why Aiden Hutchinson was not the first pick of the 2022 NFL draft. That guy is a freak show, and he is the perfect Detroit Lion.
So great for the Detroit Lions. I cannot wait to be able to see what this guy's career is going to look like in Detroit.
Probably like, I don't know, J.J. Watt Light, maybe? I don't know this case. Who knows? The guy is an absolute, he is a force. The guy is unreal. So
that was a lot of fun. We'll talk about this Thursday Night Football game, and obviously our buddy Mike Clay will join us a little bit later in this show. But first and foremost, Stephania Bell, you set us up for everything that we need on this show. You give us the injury report to decide what we need to do with our roster. So let's start here.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
In week 4, Stephania, we have not had Austin Eckler as fantasy managers because of an ankle injury. We've wanted to see him out there. Instead, we've had to roll out there with Joshua Kelly. And that's not been great.
Been pretty.
Any chance that we see Austin Eckler on the field here in week 4?
It's always a chance. You know, you mentioned he was injured in week 1. He was out weeks 2 and 3 dealing with a right high ankle sprain, something Austin Eckler has never had to manage before. So he has acknowledged that he's had to be patient. It's a learning process for him. But you do see the progress being made. Last week, he was watching practice. This week, he's participating in it. And Chris Rim, who covers the Chargers for us, said that Austin Eckler told him he can run full speed straight ahead, but the things he's still having trouble with are cutting and turning. So he started introducing curved running this week, and you can see that in some of the individual drills that he was working on. But I think maybe the most important nugget came from Austin Eckler himself who posted a tweet yesterday.
Oh, can I read it? It must. No.
Here we go.
That wasn't the one that I was thinking of.
Well, this is the one that I cared about because, number one, he's showing us a little bit of that curved running. Now, granted, the right ankle is the one that's up in the air. So we're not watching him push off on that. And you can spot a little brace under the sock, which you would expect at this stage. But he put the emoji of the stock rising. And I love to see that because, you know, he's still plays for a team. He can't give information away, but he's very good at hinting. And here's the reason it matters. The Chargers have a bye in week 5.
Yes.
And I think people just assume, well, they're going to keep him out through the bye because that's what you do. You buy an extra week. That's not how Austin Eckler's wired, and the Chargers are not going to sit him just to sit him. You can flip this and say, hey, the other way of looking at it is that they have a bye next week, so if he plays and does okay but needs a break after that, then he will have the rest and recovery. So I think Friday will tell us a lot when they get through Friday practice, but it is a possibility. Doors open.
The only thing that I have to add to this conversation, because people know how I feel on Josh Kelly, if he is the starting running back, he would not be a running back on my fantasy roster this week, is that I too went to Austin Eckler's Twitter account yesterday looking for some sort of context clue. And the first tweet that I came across was, this is from Austin Eckler. Does anyone have experience building out an online course? I wasn't sure what that meant for fantasy football, and I do not have experience building out an online course.
Oh, you got a lot of responses because I looked. I was like,
okay.
Who's offering this information?
All right.
What is he going to teach us? But I'd love to.
How to return from a high ankle injury or a high ankle sprain in 3 weeks as opposed to 4 or 5.
I'm signing up.
I will take a master class from Austin Eckler every single day of the week. All right, Stephania, let's talk about Saquon Barkley, also been dealing with an ankle injury, and someone that is playing on Monday Night Football, which always throws a little wrench into our plans.
Yeah, so this one was interesting because he gets injured in week 2. And there was discussion about whether this was a high ankle sprain or, as Adam Schefter had reported, a source telling him that it was an ordinary sprain. A lot of discussion after that. But the bottom line was that the Giants played on Thursday night. And so there was not going to be a scenario where he was going to make it back regardless because there was just not enough time. Now, that Thursday night game, he also revealed that he was, in fact, dealing with a high ankle sprain. And we talked about why it can not be defined as a high ankle sprain based on imaging, but you can still have the symptoms. You can still have the mechanism of injury that would precede a high ankle injury. Saquon also pointed out that this was not as severe as it could have been. So you have to remember that the spectrum for time to return has a lot to do with severity. Now, on average, and this information comes from my friends at thepredictors.com who have looked at this data over 10 years. On average, running back return is 3.8 games, but that is the spectrum of severity. So could he potentially return to a Monday night football game, which buys him an extra day, this coming week? Yes, it's possible. They had him in practice. Brian Daboll said they were watching how he was moving around in practice to get a look at it. Because it's a Monday night game, one practice report doesn't tell us enough. So stay tuned Friday and Saturday. But there's a possibility that we see Saquon too.
Obviously, if he plays, you're playing him. I have Matt Breida right now ranked as RB31. That is operating under the idea that Saquon will not play.
Yep. All right, Stephania. Miles Sanders dealing with a groin injury. My finger.
Yeah. That's
nice.
a little throwback
Yeah, a little
reference.
throwback.
Appreciate that. Look, he had this in the preseason. Do you remember that in the preseason he had a groin issue and it was kind of discussed up until week 1. It's why we did not see him play in the preseason.
Yep.
He did in fact play. He played through a pec injury last week. I think the fact that he was in practice Wednesday, Thursday, even though limited, I think that's encouraging. Stay tuned, but looks like he'll be okay.
Love that. And the passing game usage he's getting. All right, let's talk about Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel. Both of these 49ers, because there's always multiple 49ers on this injury report, Stephania.
Yeah, but yet, what's our record? Anyway, Brandon Aiyuk injured his shoulder and missed week 3 as a result. Back in practice Monday. I think the feeling around there is that he is going to be good to go. I expect him to play. He was not in a non-contact jersey anymore as of Thursday's practice. And then Deebo dealing with ribs and a knee issue. Now, we knew about the ribs. Remember, late in the game, it looked like he fell on the ball. He later said he got the wind knocked out of him, but he is listed on the injury report because of his ribs. Also a knee issue. Has not practiced, but it sounds like he could practice Friday. And Kyle Shanahan, on his radio appearance on KNBR, said he expected him to be listed as questionable, and then said, we can't say that yet until it gets to Friday.
Sure.
But it sounds like the door is open for Deebo if he's okay to play. He's a guy they would allow him to play.
Interesting. All right, obviously, like you said, taking on the Arizona Cardinals. So that's a really nice matchup for the 49ers.
Do not forget that George Kittle absolutely owns the Arizona Cardinals. So for some reason, Deebo is unavailable. Only more stock up for George Kittle.
That's right. All right, and Deshaun Watson taking on Baltimore. Stephania, he's got an injury to his throwing shoulder. Tell us more about this.
Yeah, it's definitely more of a concern, right? When you're a quarterback and it's your throwing shoulder. Apparently took a big hit in the Titans game to that shoulder while he was running. Limited in practice Wednesday and Thursday. Why does this matter? Because Deshaun Watson has not been performing up to par. But a couple stats from week 3. He completed 82% of his passes, the second best of his career. He also had the most air yards of any completion since joining the Browns, a 40-yard touchdown to Amari Cooper, according to ESPN Stats and Info. If his shoulder is bothering him, I don't necessarily expect him to look the same. Now, I think he's set to play, but it's definitely something to watch.
Definitely something to look out for as a part of that field. We have him ranked as someone that is kind of like a streamer at this point anyway. So this throws a little bit of doubt in there, but definitely something to look forward to. Not look forward to.
I think people are still sort of hitching their wagon to Deshaun. Like you either said, yes, I'm going to play him and he's going to be my starter, or you said I'm out of the business of Deshaun Watson.
Last week kept you afloat for one more week.
And this is not exactly the week where there are a bunch of obvious quarterback streaming options.
Yep, you are right about that. All right, we got 2 quick concussion updates, Stephania. We've not seen Jaylen Waddle, in spite of the fact that the Dolphins scored 70 points last week. He was not a part of that game. Any chance that we will have him here against the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, so the reporting slightly different for the 2 players we're going to talk about. Jaylen Waddle cleared the concussion protocol. That's how it was reported. So the expectation is that he is going to play. There's always the window, potential for a setback, but it sounds like Jaylen Waddle will play. Anthony Richardson, the other player we want to talk about here, the quarterback for the Colts, back at practice and also full participation Wednesday and Thursday, which is a really good sign, but sounds like still needs to get the independent neurological consultant clearance to be actually cleared to play, but everything trending upward for Anthony Richardson.
Okay. With that being said, Field, if Anthony Richardson is out there, I'm starting him this week.
So am I. I would love to see him back there on the field. They play the Rams on Sunday. I also would love to see Richardson start and finish a game, which despite all the brilliance he's shown in the first 5 quarters of his career, he has not started and finished the game yet for the Colts.
And the injury happened on a touchdown run.
It did, yes,
Gets
against
the
the
center
Texans.
Ryan Kelly back too.
Yep.
All right, good news there for the Colts' young offense and Anthony Richardson specifically.
Thank you so much, Stephania. Can't wait to have you back.
Brilliant work, as always. What else is new? I have a question. An important question.
Go ahead, Field.
Geico asks,
Sure.
how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance?
I would love it.
Of course you would. After all, who doesn't love a great deal, right? And when it comes to great rates on insurance for all things in your life, Geico can help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners, condo, or renters coverage. You could save even more with a special discount when you bundle your coverages. Plus, add the easy-to-use Geico mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And choosing to switch to Geico becomes an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you can save with great rates and discounts. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com to get a rate quote or contact your local agent and get started seeing how much you could save.
All right, back here on Fantasy Focus Football. My name is Daniel Dopp, joined by Mike Clay now and Field Yates. Mike, thank you for joining us on the show.
Yeah, I feel like you almost said I'm Mike Clay.
I almost
did. Saw
did.
me and
Yeah.
wanted to be
I'm
me,
Ron
and that's just
Burgundy.
what happened.
Yes.
That's cool with me.
That's one of those
I appreciate
things.
That. I'm
Yeah.
honored. I'm honored.
I feel
Hi,
like
That's
Michael.
the way to introduce somebody.
Hey, fact or fiction? The team that you root for has more wins than the team that Daniel roots for.
They're equal, right? Or no?
No,
It's
that
no.
They're equal,
it's
yes.
all-
Oh, yeah, you are right.
Yes,
it is.
they are.
Oh, yeah,
It is.
three,
As of
you
right
know,
now,
three
it's
and
equal.
one.
I mean, unless you're watching this on like Tuesday because you DVR'd it on Friday and the Eagles win.
Yeah,
they
spoiler
are
alert.
tied.
Gosh.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh, spoiler alert on the Eagles win.
they're winning.
People go back and watch the show. I don't know
On
what I'm
Tuesdays,
talking about.
yeah.
I don't know.
Let's talk about Thursday Night Football because the Detroit Lions looked fantastic. I tweeted this out. They put on a clinic, at least in the first half in Lambeau. They looked really good, especially one guy on the ground, David Montgomery, coming back from that thigh injury. 32 carries, 121 rushing yards, and 3 touchdowns. Plus, he got 2 passes in the passing game. Total of 34.1 fantasy
Mike
points.
is shaking his head right now.
What's wrong with that, Mike?
That's a huge number. 32 carries.
I mean,
That is-
unbelievable.
That's a
34
number we don't see
opportunities.
often.
It's massive
we
for
don't-
him.
Yeah, you don't see 30-plus carries in the NFL very often, especially
very
this day and
rare,
age.
yeah.
Played 70% of the snaps, big edge and snaps over Jammer Gibbs, who played 38%. And we talked about this last week. This is the expectation. As soon as there were reports Montgomery may play in this game, he's the better fantasy option, and here we are. So, yeah, they've told us. They've put it on the board.
They've told us,
who their
they've shown
lead
us
back is.
exactly
Yeah.
how they want to run this.
Yeah.
Yep.
Before the show, Dan and I were going back and forth and wondering. I think if you're a Jammer Gibbs manager, what you're asking yourself right now is, will it get better? And I'm at the point now, the sample size is representative enough in 2 different ways that I'm not totally convinced this is definitely going to get better. We saw Jammer Gibbs have a role in which he was the guy for this Detroit Lions offense, right?
Yep.
What did he do? 17 carries, 80 yards, and 1 catch. He has been the counterpunch in 3 out of the 4 games, and it's very clear that David Montgomery is going to get the much more meaningful work at the goal line, and Gibbs is going to get some, but not a ton of passing game utilization. If you have Jammer Gibbs right now, I think you are a bit nervous that the ceiling may be a lot lower than we expected for a guy who was the best pass-catching running back, or at least tied with Bijan Robinson coming into the draft this year.
I agree. I think what we needed to see was last week when Montgomery was out, Gibbs have like a DeAndre Swift-like game where he had a ton of big workload and was super productive and kind of forced his way into a larger share of the backfield, and that did not happen for him, and he reverted right back to that role. So he's going to have his ups and downs. He's going to score some touchdowns. Remember, DeAndre Swift in a similar role to this scored 7+ touchdowns every year of his Lions career.
Yep.
So there's going to be opportunities behind that line for him to be productive, but definitely off to a much slower start than we hoped for.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be end up like he's more of a top 25 to 30 running back as opposed to a top
he's like a
15 or
flex
20
now.
running back. Yep,
He's like a
totally
flex,
agree.
and he's certainly not a lineup blocker.
Lions only threw the football 8 times in the second half
know.
as they just ran it down their throats with David
Totally. I
Montgomery
mean, they ground
over and
controlled
over.
the heck out of that game. Super impressive. We
Yes,
know
they
what the
did.
formula. This Lions team has. Here's what I respect a ton about this team right now, but I like the fact that they have a vision of who they want to be.
Yep.
They've assembled the right personnel to do it, and they exert their will over you.
They're less nervous about Jammer Gibbs than we are as fantasy managers as well. By the way, they're going to
course,
figure it
yeah.
out. But for us in fantasy, it's like, wait a minute, we want to see more usage out of this kid. I promise you the
totally.
Lions are not thinking that same thing. They're happy.
Yeah, I hear you. What was incredible, too, about this game is maybe the first 3 plays by any team this season, the first 3 offensive plays, they lost yards.
Yep.
They lost yards, and then he threw
Interception.
I know. I was like, uh-oh. And then
This
the
didn't
Packers
look good.
scored. It's like,
Yep, totally.
got a field goal. And then they just dominated after that. It
Yeah,
was
Packers did not look good. Jordan Love didn't look fantastic in spite of the fact that you put up 17.6 fantasy
I don't know how he
points.
did it.
Didn't feel
it
good.
Basically, all came in the second half. The Packers had 20 total yards of offense in the first half. Jordan Love, though, continues to find a way sort of by hook or by crook, to borrow an old Matthew line, to maybe float onto that streaming radar. I do still have some reservations, though, because it was so ugly in the first half. And if that is the kind of offense they're going to play on occasion, could be tough for him to continue to deliver these near 18-point efforts like he gave you last night after back-to-back 20-plus efforts in the first 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think when that defense is healthier, it's going to keep them competitive enough that it's not going to be garbage time all season.
You know what,
Jordan
though?
Love.
But is that defense, over the past few years, has any defense been, what's the expression, like, the whole is greater than the sum of its parts?
Yeah.
The Packers are the opposite of that, right? Like, on paper, this was a good competitive defense, and yet I feel like they just have not dominated in the way that their talent suggests. I know that no Jair Alexander last night.
Yeah.
There's been
Campbell
obviously other injuries as well.
They're missing
but
their top 2 corners. I mean,
yeah, no doubt. I'm
I
just
think
saying,
they're
it just
better.
feels like they haven't been nearly as dominant as the talent suggests.
That's fair.
They
I mean,
should
I think my point is when they do have those guys healthy, that's 2 of their best defensive players that
Sure,
were out.
sure.
Really 3. Well, say what you want about Stokes, but potentially very good. I think it'll just keep them at least closer in games. I don't think they'd get blown out quite that much.
Let me spend the rest of the time we have on this game to own it. Guys, last night, someone tweeted at several of us and said, like, hey, I know what's going to happen. If I start Aaron Jones, he's going to have 5 carries for 7 yards and then get hurt. If I sit him, he's going to go off. Daniel and I both interacted with the tweet. I replied and said, hey, start him. He's going to score a touchdown. Come back to me and reply to this tweet once you see it. I was wrong. I couldn't have been more wrong. Not only did he barely play, he barely produced at all. I think he gets you like 1.4 fantasy points. My bad to that person. My bad to everybody else that may have started Aaron Jones last night. I started him, if it makes you feel any better. But terrible night for the Packers offense, and Aaron Jones did not look like a player who was anywhere close to 100% full health last night. They barely utilized him in the second.
Yeah, I saw the tweets replying. They were very critical of you, and I liked them all. I just kept it like. I was like,
sabotager.
Get him.
All right, Mike is off the podcast forever.
All right. Back here on Fantasy Focus Football, my name is Daniel Dopp, here with Mike Clay and Field Yates. We are diving into our Week 4 preview, Part 2. In case you did not watch or listen to Part 1, go ahead and check it out. It has came up from our Thursday show, Field and I diving into a bunch of things. This part is brought to you by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. Mike, we are talking about this New Orleans, Tampa Bay game, and Field and I were talking about this before the show.
Yeah.
If there was one thing that feels like it is like the poster child for the Shadow Report, it would be a photo of Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore. And
call.
that's what we get to see again here this week. What is the expectation for Mike Evans? Because he's looked really good through the first 3 weeks with Baker.
Yeah, in the NFL, there's so many things that change every year: trades, injuries, personnel, retirements.
Aaron Jones touchdown output.
Exactly. It's just nonstop. It's rare that we're talking about the 11th time that Marshawn Lattimore is going to shadow Mike Evans.
Wow.
He's been around 11th time.
2 stalwarts.
That's very rare.
Yeah,
That's got to be up there as one of the top one-on-ones of the last decade or so, certainly since I've been doing this. So the plus for Mike Evans and why you cannot bench him, I'll get into the matchup in 1 second, is that he has a 31% target share this season. That is a career high, believe it or not.
That's great.
He's getting them the ball a ton. He's been productive, over 100 air yards in every game. So despite what I'm about to say, it's going to be really hard to bench him.
Okay.
That said, 13 career games against the Saints since Lattimore was drafted. He shadowed him in 10 of those 13 games. He was out for 2 of them. Mike Evans in those games, counting all 13, averaging 5.3 targets, 2.8 catches, 48 yards, 4 total touchdowns during the span, so one basically every 3 games, 9.6 fantasy points per game. In all his other career games, he's averaging around 14.5 fantasy points per game. He's been under 13 fantasy points in 12 of the 13. The last exception was 2018. That was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, he has had his number. I mean, just Evans has not had a good game against Lattimore in 5 years.
It's very personal too. Like,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I didn't even mention that
they'll
part.
fight this weekend too.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
these
what I was
guys
gonna-
hate each other.
Yeah.
Maybe they respect each other, but they also hate each other.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
you're saying,
yeah.
but all that data that you provided us with, we still all have him as a top 20 play because he's been so dominant this year.
Yeah, he is-
I don't know.
yeah.
Like it's a really tough one. If you're sitting there staring at your lineup and you're like, wait, I'm going to pull a guy who has a touchdown
It's
in
tough.
each of the first 3 games. Marshawn Lattimore is the truth, but that will be a hard thing for me to do as well, unless I had an unbelievable option sitting there waiting to replace Mike Evans. I've got him as a top 20 play as well.
I'm with you. I think that if not for this matchup, we'd be talking about him in the top 10 right now because
Yes.
that's the level he's been at.
He's been
But he's
excellent,
down in
yeah.
I have him 19th this week after removing Thursday night guys. So, no doubt about it. And by the way, you mentioned this. I didn't mention it yet, but the last time they faced off was last year. They both got ejected for starting a brawl, and Mike Evans was suspended for a game. That's the last time they played because Lattimore was out for the second meeting between these two teams last season. So this is going to be big.
I actually play in a league where you get points if your player gets ejected. So I won my league. I won my week that week because Mike Evans.
Both guys?
I had both guys, yes.
Wow,
and it's a 125-point bonus. If both of them get ejected,
that's awesome.
You get a 300-point bonus. So, yes, I am rooting for the brawl this
suspensions
weekend.
too? Do you get those?
No, those, that's like a stat correction. You get it after the fact. Yeah, of course.
It's
That's
impossible, though. Well, it's almost impossible to bench a guy that's getting a 30% target share. Like,
Is it impossible to bench his teammate, though?
Ooh, that's a great question because we have not seen it from Chris Godwin yet. But if we're going to see that shadow from Marshawn Lattimore, do we just get targets funneled to Chris Godwin here, Mike?
Yeah, this is tough because the Saints are pretty good defensively overall as well. But yeah, if you expect Evans' targets to be down, presumably they would go toward Chris Godwin. But it's been a struggle this year. Yet to clear 58 yards or 11 fantasy points in a single game this season. Targets are down. His target share is actually similar to last year. Yeah. But we talked about this in the offseason. That target share has to go up because it's not a Tom Brady high volume offense. It's going to set an NFL record for completions. Right. His targets are down from 9.5 to 6.3. That is 3 targets per game is massive. So I don't think Godwin is a lineup lock at this point. I have him just outside my top 30 though. So he's certainly a flex option.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit yesterday with like these fantasy no man's land players where but I think Chris Godwin has graduated from there, right? Because we're now 3 weeks into the season. The target share, even as Mike says, is fine, but the target total is low enough where I think Chris Godwin is the kind of player that should earn his way back into your lineup, so to speak, rather than starting him again this week. This is a tricky one, though, because it has nothing to do with Chris Godwin. I don't think anything's changed in the skill set of Chris Godwin, who makes $20 million a year, and he's worth every penny of it, right? It's just the offense is functioning a certain way right now that is not lending itself at all to Chris Godwin. It's sometimes how I feel about Terry McLaurin, where it's like, I know this player rules. I also know that he may be better in real life than he is in fantasy football right now, and it feels like Chris Godwin has entered that territory for the Bucs. I've got him as wide receiver 32 this week.
Doesn't feel good. I would love to be able to feel more confident in Chris Godwin, but at least in this situation, I'm hoping that if they are focused on, or at least if Marshawn Lattimore is focused there, that we're going to get a little bit more Chris Godwin. We'll see how that works out. If we don't see him, though, we have been getting a ton of volume field from Rachaad White. I understand that fantasy managers maybe want to not feel great because they want either more passing game usage, they want to see him get in the end zone, but he's getting work.
He is getting work, but he is right now, like, he's the predictable running back. Because he's going to play all the time.
Yes.
He's playing like, he's not Kyron Williams, but he's playing a ton of snaps.
He's up there.
Tons of targets. He's had 2 bad matchups and 1 good matchup. He crushed in the good matchup, and he was not great in 2 bad matchups. I do not think it's a great matchup this week, but it's hard for me to move Rachaad White much lower than running back 21 because he's playing basically every snap and getting like 80% of the running back touches, Mike.
I agree 100%. Again, 4th in touches, 20th in fantasy points. So something has to give at some point. If the volume
Todd Bowles
continues,
talked about this a little bit this week. You see what he said or no?
No, go ahead.
Todd Bowles, our head coach, talked about how he's got to stop trying to hit as many home runs, Rachaad White. Maybe just like take what the line blocks for you. Maybe that will result in like, an extra half yard per carry for Rachaad White. I don't think it's going to make him all of a sudden like the NFL's leading rusher or the most efficient player, but it might over the course of the season account for like a small uptick in overall production.
Yeah, you know what that makes me think though is like if they're telling him that and that doesn't happen, then get Sean Tucker on the end of your bench because maybe they start to spread it out. Maybe they give him the hook at some point, change it to someone else. I think that's possible. If they're getting nothing out of your run game, you change it up. I don't know if he's going to look if he continues to produce at this level and is averaging 3.2 yards per carry in week 7. I don't think they're just going to keep doing that the whole season. Do you? I mean, usually,
I don't know. Yes, you're right. Most of the time, a team would move on. I don't know who they move on to, though. Like, Sean Tucker is fine.
I think he'd get a look. Yeah, he's getting runner. I mean, he's undrafted, and he's second in line already getting run.
I know. Our producer, Jackson, is going to be scring in my ear right now, telling me he is basically like the second coming of Barry Sanders.
Yep, Adrian Peterson.
He also went to Syracuse. But, yeah, no, I feel like this is still – I feel like Rachaad White's leash is longer than a player with his level of efficiency right now. Maybe I'm wrong.
Look, I hear you. I have him on a few teams. I like him as
crank up the Leonard Fournette rumors to Tampa Bay again?
Stop.
Jonathan Taylor. What else can we do here? Derrick Henry. Who else can we put on this team?
Still the shakiest backfield in the NFL, boss man? Or is there another one?
Wow.
Baltimore.
I forgot he called me
I've got my mentions over here on Twitter, which is open up. People are still just peppering me.
I have to watch what I say about Rachaad White. He's probably watching.
All right, let's talk about the other side of that game because it sounds like we're going to have Jameis Winston under center field. Understanding that we're going to have that. We kind of talked about it a little bit after the game on Monday when we did our recap. If you have Jameis under center rather than Derek Carr, how much does that change how you're looking at these pass catchers?
Not a whole lot. I've got Chris Olave as wide receiver 10 this week. He's been brilliant so far this season, pacing for over 1,700 yards, 120 catches and 1,700 yards. Now 0 touchdowns, which is very Deontay Johnson of him. That's going to change at some point, perhaps as soon as this week. This Bucs secondary has been hit by injuries hard so far this season. Wide receiver 10 for me, Jameis Winston on the short list for best backup quarterbacks in the NFL right now.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I'll just add that you mentioned the no touchdowns. He is 12th in expected touchdowns. So he's had opportunity. It's just been bad luck so far. Once that changes, the hype on Olave is going to go through the roof. It's been quiet so far for the most part, but there's a lot to be optimistic about. In fact, this might be the final chance if there's a window, maybe to get a little discount on him in a trade.
Chris Olave.
This is probably your last chance.
Not off my team. Do you know where Deontay Johnson ranked in expected touchdowns last year?
He had like 4 expected. Yeah, he was up higher than you'd probably think. Maybe 20th or something at receiver.
Really?
Yeah.
God, that makes me just that much more
good.
sad about it.
Yeah, it doesn't feel good. Mike, we are going to see Alvin Kamara for the first time here in the season. Taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, though, how do you expect he's going to look against this Tampa Bay rush defense?
I think that just the involvement in the passing game is enough that he should be in your lineup. I think you drafted him for, look, if you drafted him at his ADP, you drafted him with the expectation that come week 4, he would be in your lineup. There's nothing about this backfield that suggests we should be worried about workload. Jamal Williams is on IR. Trey Miller has played 1 game in the league. It should be Kamara at least, 12 to 15 touches is probably worst case scenario. Start him.
More than anything, that what I am focused on, because I am also starting Alvin Kamara. He's inside my top 20 for running backs. But more than anything, what I care about is what the passing game utilization looks like. I think we believed that the addition of Derek Carr would probably help it revert back to where it was during the Drew Brees days, where Kamara started his career with 81, 81, 81, and then 83 catches in his first 4 seasons. We have seen life with Jameis Winston. It has not been terrible. We're not talking about Derrick Henry in terms of the passing game utilization, but been more like 50 to 55 catches per season. If Kamara pushes for 6 or 7 targets per game, he could definitely reestablish himself as a top 10 or 12 running back every week in fantasy.
Yeah, I have him locked into my lineup this week. You know who I don't have locked into my lineup this week, though, Fields?
Who's that?
Justin Fields.
Who does? I mean, who would ever
do that?
have
I'm
him?
not sure who would. Field, give me your, when your breakdown and when you're looking at why you would or wouldn't start Justin Fields this week, why are you approaching him the way that you are?
I'm not starting because I watch football.
Okay.
Oh, that's
a
Wait
good
a
one.
minute.
I know Mike Scout's box scores.
You can
only.
watch them? I thought you can only... I only look at the snap counts in the box score. You're telling me there's footage of the game?
There is actual footage. I have a guy.
This changes everything.
I have a guy, and he helps me out. His name is Scott Hansen.
That's what it is. Yes.
Okay.
We hang out for 7 hours every Sunday. We don't watch commercials.
right.
We just watch ball.
We just watch.
All right. So what I'm hearing is you watch the Bears games,
Right.
and that's it. You don't watch the Broncos defense. You didn't catch that game. You missed that game
I
last week?
watched them in week 1.
All right. So they gave up a lot of points.
I
in
don't
that
think
game.
anyone saw the Broncos
was
defense
gonna
last
say.
week, Mike, for what it's worth.
That's kind of my point. I think Justin Fields is good enough to just run a 40-yard dash down the field into the end zone against this Denver defense that allowed 70 points last week to the Dolphins, and that's my justification here. I'm giving him another week. This is a guy we ranked as a mid-range QB1. He is an elite matchup. He's still adding value with his legs. He has good targets around him. I know it's been a mess out of the gate. If it's a disaster against this defense, I will change my tune for sure on this situation. But
They play next Thursday night as well. So if it's a disaster, I believe
It'll be a quick hook.
Commanders next Thursday night?
I don't know.
Am I making that up? I feel like the Bears do play next Thursday night. But just to be clear, people, we do have a board bet on this game.
Sure
Daniel
do.
and I have him outside the top 11. Mike has him inside the top 11. If he is quarterback 11, we push, and Mike owes Daniel and I a steak dinner.
That's right.
All right, deal. Look, they give 21 points to Sam Howell as well on top of this. I think Fields can get there.
If you
Bears,
think
Commanders
Fields can get
confirmed.
there, do you think that DJ Moore can get there as well, or do you think this is Fields using his legs to be able to do
I have him
that?
34th. He's his top target. He could certainly be in lineups this week as a flex option. He has 1 good game, 2 duds. Last week, it was garbage time that helped him out. He's going to see some Patrick Surtain in this game. But again, if they're able to score a lot of points against a poor defense, it's a good spot here for
Are
Moore.
you certain of that?
I am feeling certain. Surtain.
Comedy podcast number 2.
All right, here on Fantasy Focus Football, Field Yates and Mike Clay and Daniel Dopp making our way through the...
Hydrating, sorry, guys.
That's nothing wrong with that. Our Week 4 preview part 2. Guys, how are you approaching these Miami running backs, Field? I watched them score, I don't know, about 90 fantasy points last week.
What defense did they face?
I don't know.
I'm gonna call
Not a defense.
Vance Joseph, the Broncos defensive coordinator. I'm gonna say, hey, so Vance, what did you do last week against the Dolphins? And then do the exact opposite of that.
Wait, isn't that kind of what
Is it
Sean
possible?
Payne
Hold
said?
on now.
Wait a minute.
Is
that
it
a Sean
possible?
Payne joke? Because that's kind of what he said.
Hold on.
What?
Did Vance Joseph, was he facing the Dolphins running backs in fantasy last week? No. Did he start them? Was Vance like,
He was
you know
one
what?
of the 0.6% that started
I'm
De'Von
going to
Achane.
grab Raheem Mostert and De'Von Achane and just start them both against us. That would be wild. Here's how I'm approaching them. You have to start Raheem Mostert. Like the numbers are obviously been off the charts great. He's the highest scoring running back in fantasy. It's the most difficult matchup. Well, it's one of the more difficult. I guess they've only played 4 games. It's not an easy matchup. That's what I was trying to say against the Buffalo Bills. But not starting Raheem Mostert, how could you possibly do that? As far as Achane goes, I am doing so because of the fear of him going off again and me having him on my bench. I've got him as running back 25, so it's not a lock it in for every single team. But as we saw last week with De'Von Achane, he needs just 1 play to take it the distance. He needs just 18 plays to score 4 touchdowns. So Achane certainly on the radar this week. I'm bracing for the possibility, though, that he plays 20 snaps on Sunday and has 8 fantasy points. That would not totally surprise me.
Yeah, running back, and I mean, you could say this about all of fantasy, but especially running back is just chaos, and you could see that because these are 2 top 5 scoring running backs, and we're like, should we start them? Are they lineup blocks? Are they
correct?
Like, is the number 1 scoring running back even in our top 10? No, like it's unreal. It just shows you what a 70-point game could do for your stat line as well,
Right?
Yeah.
When you're looking
I think Tua is a more interesting conversation, though, like at least than Mostert, right? Because Tua, it's a single player at the position. Tua's had 2 very, very good games, and then obviously 1 game that was kind of ho-hum. He's played 1 very good defense, and he's played 2 not very good defenses. So, Mike, are you fading Tua this week a little bit?
I have him QB 10.
Okay, so still starting,
it's a borderline. But to your point, though, yes, we've seen this kind of a little bit of boom-bust nature based on the matchup, right? 27-plus points in the Chargers and the Broncos games. We already saw him play the 1 good defense, and he had 12 points. Yeah. And also we've seen him play Buffalo before. He's averaging 15 fantasy points per game in 4 full games against the Bills in his career. They did not leave injured. 15 isn't going to crush your week, but that's not a very good number. Ideally, you want to get around 20 or so. Also, the Bills, off to a great start against quarterbacks, the fewest fantasy points allowed. So this is a tough matchup.
What else
Tua is
new,
not a lineup block.
The Bills just crushing it against opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, what else?
They're really, really good.
Yeah.
No Jordan Poyer for the Bills, one of their starting safeties, which that doesn't help, but I don't know that it dramatically changes my ranking for Tua. I've got him as quarterback 7.
Yeah, look, I mean, Jordan Poyer and Micah Hyde have been maybe the best safety duo in the NFL since Sean McDermott's got there.
Yeah.
They both signed as journeyman backups for Green Bay, and I think Poyer bounced around with Philly and Cleveland.
Cleveland, yep.
These guys, that looked like, okay, this is going to be one of the worst safety situations in the league. It's one of the best. Yeah. That just shows you the mastery of Sean McDermott. I have no doubt he'll fill in with someone. Maybe DeMar Hamlin's active this week. We'll see.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense.
That'd be cool.
I love both of these offenses, but it just feels like because it's a divisional game and these defenses are both pretty good that it's like as much as I want to get a bunch of points, I'm kind of expecting this to be one of those interdivisional defense is going to grind it out. It's not going to be like the 35-34 game that I want it to be because I
don't
feel
know
like,
what to expect. I mean,
well, that's part of it. I don't know what to expect.
It's weird. It was like that. It was the grinded out game in the 2 games they played in Buffalo last year, and then the game they played in Miami was a track meet.
Which is crazy. It's like, which one are you going to get
Is
this
that
week?
the home field advantage of Miami? They score a zillion points when playing at home.
Oh, that's a good
By the way,
point.
the Dolphins going on the road, 3 out of 4 to start the season. If they go 4-0 coming out of the gates, woo!
Second, by the way, seeing as how everybody else is, like we've been talking about, why isn't everyone else doing the tush push like Jalen Hurts and the Eagles?
Yeah.
I feel like every other NFL team should start looking at why do we not put everybody else in motion so that they're also at full speed by the time that they do it. With the same way with Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle, it's an interesting conversation. So, all right, let's move ahead. Talk about these Eagles, Mike Clay, because DeAndre Swift, 3rd in rush attempts over the last 2 weeks.
Who'd have thunk it?
Who would have thought that's the way that they were going to
Not
use
Lions
DeAndre?
fans.
No, not Lions fans.
Wow, dude, they're 3-1, man. You can't.
No,
do
I didn't mean it that way. I mean, they didn't see him use that way when he was there.
okay.
That was not a dig at the
Fair
Lions
enough.
fans.
That's okay.
At the Lions, not at
You
all. No.
took the Vikings, though, to win the division, right? So anyways,
No
when
comment.
you're looking at DeAndre
Hey, I
Swift.
took the Dolphins to go to the Super Bowl. So.
Okay, all
Did you
right,
really?
all right.
Yeah, that's my Super Bowl pick in the AFC. They're crushing it.
How about that? Who's
Yeah,
your
that's my
NFC
breakout
pick?
team this year. The
Cardinals?
The Eagles. Of course it was the Eagles.
Come on. I wanted, I knew it was going Miami, and then I was like, all right, well, the East Ventura Bowl. I mean,
Ooh, good call.
Oh, that's fun.
Good call.
Yeah.
All right. Is DeAndre Swift a lineup lock? Knowing he's not getting any of this passing game usage, but he's just seeing so much work on the ground game.
Yep, RB14 against Washington, mid-pack against running backs so far, but the way he's been utilized, 16 for $130 with Kenny Gainwell back last week, and he only played 54% of the snaps. That number was a lot larger prior to late in the game, and they were up by multiple scores. So he seems to have established himself. Maybe famous last words. He seemed to establish himself.
Yeah, you just jinxed it. Good job,
as the
Mike.
lead back last week. But
Nice job by you.
Yeah, over the last
Start him.
2 weeks, he's averaging 5.27 yards before first contact.
Before contact.
That's not yards per carry. Before he's even being touched.
and that
Over
shows up on
9
the film
yards
for
per
sure.
carry. It
Sometimes
does.
it feels like he's even in slow motion coming into the backfield, and it's like he's just like I can't believe
like
how
there's just
wide
no one
open
around
these
him.
gigantic holes are. It's
If
amazing.
you have a GM on your team and you ever get the chance to talk to that GM, your advice to them should just be draft offensive linemen all the
as
time.
many as you can.
All the time. Yeah.
Phil, let's talk about Jakobi Meyers because he has looked fantastic.
Yeah, he
was. Yeah, he is.
Fantastic. Here's the
Looked
real
great.
question, though, for
Okay.
me. If Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't go because
Yeah.
he has been dealing with concussion symptoms,
Yep.
how are you looking at Jakobi Meyers? Is he still a start with a potential backup?
I think he'd still a start. Now, what I would really like to see if Jimmy G is out is Aiden O'Connell and not Brian Hoyer. I don't know who the Raiders will start. Jimmy G actually returned to practice on Thursday in a limited capacity, so maybe there's a chance Jimmy G does play on Sunday. If it's not him, though, I want it to be Aiden O'Connell, and the matchup is just too good.
Yes.
The Chargers defense, I don't know how they stink so much in the
I don't
secondary.
either. They're
but
loaded
they
on
stink
paper.
like one of my baby's diapers right now. J.C. Jackson doesn't even play for them. He's literally a healthy scratch. I mean, it's wild.
so
The
weird.
guy's like one of the highest paid corners in football, and he can't even get on the field for them right now. So anyways, the matchup is just too good. Myers has just been too good. And while Aiden O'Connell is definitely a mystery, given that he hasn't played a single regular season snap before, he looked pretty darn good in the preseason, baby.
Did? Absolutely.
I'd be a little bit less optimistic if Brian Hoyer starts, but not to the point that I am not starting Jakobi Meyers.
Yeah, he's 5th in fantasy points per game so far. He's been terrific. And also, suddenly, he was famous for not scoring touchdowns.
All he can do now is score touchdowns.
Right. In his last 5 games, he has 5 touchdowns.
Yeah.
The dude just can't stop scoring. So, great matchup. Chargers, to your point, most fantasy points to receiver so far.
They
Myers, I have
stink on
14.
defense.
I don't understand it.
It's crazy that here we are in week 4. Again, this is fantasy football. This is how it works. That we're in week 4, and I have way more confidence starting Jakobi Myers than I do in Josh Jacobs from this same team with the way that Josh Jacobs has started this year.
Yeah, I'm going to put it out there just in case anybody is asking. Yes, I am starting Josh Jacobs this week. A good opportunity, a fix-me game, if you will, right, Mike? Against this
Hashtag fix
Chargers defense that made Alexander Madison have his best day of the season so far in fantasy.
Absolutely. Are we going to think about benching Trevor Lawrence here after a couple of bad weeks?
What do you say,
Field
Mike?
Jakes?
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll give it to Mike. Mike,
there you go.
You going to bench Trevor Lawrence?
I am. I've been 17th in my
Holy
rankings.
cow.
Way down the ranks.
That's a Justin Fields
Wow.
Is that
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
Fields
I know.
over Lawrence this
By
week.
a lot, 11.
Yeah, it's been a tough start. Again, we talked about this earlier in the week. The Jags are 31st in offensive EPA. Lawrence only has 3 touchdowns so far this season. His best weekly finish so far is 8th, and it's not like he's faced the stiffest of competition so far either. The Falcons so far, they've allowed a handful of touchdowns. They haven't faced a lot of competition, so it's kind of a neutral matchup right now, in my opinion. So I'm not worried about that, but I am worried about the play of this offense, which has been very poor.
Yeah, let me ask you this. Do you think that part of this with Trevor Lawrence is a Trevor Lawrence thing when you're watching this? Or is this because this offense leads the NFL in drops, that like there is a part of this that isn't fully on Trevor?
They have 8 so far this season. That's bad. 8 in 3 games.
Had a
Not
lot
good
last year,
there.
too.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, it's a concern, and probably, I'd have to look deeper at this, but I know the O-line coming into the season was a major concern for me. I had them ranked 31st, so there were a couple red flags maybe we should have paid a lot of attention to. Also, new play caller, kind of a surprise at the end of the offseason that Doug Peterson would not be calling plays. We'll see if that changes at some point, but for now, I'm nervous about this offense.
Do you have any analytics for how these Jaguars play at home in London?
Ooh,
Oh.
good question.
You know what I mean?
I
Kyle
don't.
Pitts touchdown? We betting that or no?
Oh, that's true.
Guys,
Outside
like,
the
if
country.
it's going to happen, this is where it's going to happen, right?
Yeah, he used to score a few. He might score a few and then score 0 the rest of the season. That would be perfect.
You know what? I'm not going to lie to you guys.
If he scores a few, I'll be stoked.
If he has like a catch, I'll be stoked on Sunday. I'm not even talking about a touchdown catch. I've stopped giving me the pragmatic numbers. The guy stinks at fantasy football
This is
now.
like his target share is crazy high, and again, not doing anything with it.
I know. I saw somebody had the tweet, and I really apologize for not knowing offhand who it was. But somebody was like, if you're looking for the silver lining with Kyle Pitts, it was like, here are the 8 important receiving categories, and he's like top 10 for amongst all tight ends. Like air yards, target share, targets, total. I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah. So where's the game at?
In London. It's at Wembley, right?
They have a receiver with that? London, maybe?
Does London have a wide receiver?
London. Could this be a Drake
get
London?
it.
I can't start.
I don't think this
What happens is
no.
that Mike is telling you that he spends hours upon hours studying every available statistic and on his computer running these projections 100 times over. If Drake London is playing in London, start him.
Start him. London and London. That's it. There's a category. If your last name is the same as the city you play in, you start the player. I'm still not going to start him, though, because I've seen this offense play.
Wait, hold on. You just confused the heck out of me.
We just went through the whole rigmarole.
Because that was all fake. That's all. That was a joke. I'm just not. I'm like at 70% of normal today. A little off. Little off today. But yeah, not. I don't think we could start Drake London. Do we agree with that?
I am not starting Drake London as well.
That's the analysis.
Justin Fields plays on a field every week. Are you going to start him this week?
Wow, great call. I am not. I've had him 16th in my quarterback rankings.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
As much as it pains me, because I do like the name Justin Fields.
Hey, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, I know.
That's a little close to home.
That's a, God, it does pain me, though, with Justin, because, man, there were a few things more enjoyable last year than the Justin Fields experience for that month where he was the highest scoring player in fantasy. That was awesome.
Seen that. At least we've seen that from him. We've seen that high ceiling.
I also think it's very fun. London game starts at 9:30 a.m. And while you're watching that London game, Field, you can also be watching us on Fantasy Football Now.
Yes, you can. So what you can do is you can tell your friends you're watching the London game, but you can actually watch Fantasy Football Now and boost our ratings. If you're out there and you live in Hawaii, send us a picture of you watching the game starting at 4:30 local time.
Yes.
Shout out to you if you put in the hours for a full Sunday in Hawaii.
Gosh, I used to do that. That was a lot of fun. I did not like getting up at 6:30 a.m. for football. All right, Field Yates, Mike Clay, and Daniel Dopp. Yeah,
that is early.
It was 6:30 a.m.
Yeah,
you
but
walk
the
down to the
idea of
sports
Sunday
bar.
night football being done at 5 is
That part was
very
incredible.
alluring to me.
Oh, it was so great. So great. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys.
How about them Cowboys?
They were really good the first couple weeks, and then they played the Arizona Cardinals.
They ran into the buzzsaw. The buzzsaw that is the Arizona Cardinals. No, more seriously, the Cardinals have certainly been impressive this season in terms of maximizing every ounce of talent they have available.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been impressed.
Now the Dallas Cowboys goes up against the New England Patriots. Not a bad defense in their own right, Mike Clay. Are you trusting Dak Prescott, or would you bench him this week?
Absolutely not. The Cowboys they got upset last week, but whether they win or lose, Dak Prescott has not been a fantasy option. Big letdown last week. Big letdown. 0 top 16 fantasy showings this season. He has 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Under 255 passing yards in every game. Only has 44 rushing yards. Yeah. Like how many more ways you need? Also, they're playing the Patriots, who are terrific. Generally on the defensive side of the football, they've allowed the 5th fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks, which is interesting, because they faced, Zach Wilson, but also Jalen Hurts and Tua, and they've held all 3 below 13 fantasy points. So you're telling me you want to play Dak? I mean, I have him outside my top 20.
Do we
He's
think
not even
the
close.
days of him being a start? Okay,
and they ruined my eliminator season too.
Oh, and that.
A lot of
oh my God!
Yes.
Are the days of Dak being a fantasy starter behind us? You guys think?
Maybe. I think he's just a streamer. Maybe when the matchup's good, but we thought we had a good matchup last week.
Yeah, I should have clarified. So. When I consider a fantasy starter, hey, every week I'm lineup block. It seems like maybe those days are behind us for Dak Prescott.
Yeah, because he wasn't that last year either. He was 14th points per game last year.
Yeah, and he's not running that much anymore. Correct, and while the Cowboys do obviously have very good receivers, they seem to run the football enough that it's like the volume's not going to be there as a thrower. He's not going to run that much. I don't know. Weird times right now if you have Dak Prescott. If he is your starting quarterback, I would suggest pivoting elsewhere, or else your season could be going by the wayside.
That's a really, really tough one there, because not even been a top 16 quarterback one time, Mike. That's not something I was expecting. All right, let's talk about the Steelers running backs. Is there a chance that you're starting either one of them? Because if you are, you're not feeling good about it, Field. But if I can make a case for not putting either one of them in my starting lineup this week.
I do not want either of them in my starting lineup. But to me, in some ways, that isn't even the point. the point is that, like, we're talking about, like, it's not about which one I would start necessarily. It's like Najee Harris is no longer a lineup lock. The guy who freaking led the NFL in touches and running back targets 2 years ago is now unplayable in fantasy. Like, and what's the reason to believe that it's going to get better and stay better going forward? That's the question that I have. It can get better. We talked about this with like Deshaun Watson last week. It can get better because the matchup was so good. Mm-hmm. Maybe Joe Burrow, it gets better this week for a weekend against the Titans because the matchup is just so good. Yep. But if Najee Harris is going to be ceding valuable opportunities in the passing game to Jaylen Warren and not playing nearly the number of snaps as he was playing 2 seasons ago, how can we count on Najee being a consistent top 15 running back threat? I have each of them. Here's where I have them ranked this week. Najee, running back 28. Jaylen Warren, running back 29. I would prefer to not play either of them against the Texans on Sunday.
I'm with you, but if you want an excuse to fire them up, one of them, I would still lean toward Harris. He had 19 carries. He still has a slight edge in terms of usage. Again, he had 19 carries last week. That's helpful for Najee Harris. And also the matchup. To your point, if there's a chance for him to kind of get pointed in the right direction, it's here against Houston. 5th most fantasy points and 5 touchdowns allowed to running backs this season. They allowed 17-plus points to Travis Etienne and Zach Moss, and also a combined 30 to the Baltimore Ravens backfield, the combination of the trio.
There's a chance.
So maybe there's a chance. Of course, they could split 24 points down the middle, 12 and 12, and it's not really helpful in fantasy. So it's tough. I mean, again, I have them ranked about where you do. I don't feel good about it, but there is some sort of hope maybe that they can hang on and at least put up enough points to get you by for this week, but it's a tough spot.
Do you ever notice this? Like, Mike will say something to give you some hope, and then he'll snatch it away from you right away.
It's
like,
just the voice of reason. That's what I do
24 points could happen. They could also be split. How about 4 ways? Like, they could re-sign Derek Watt right now. He could score a 1-yard rushing touchdown.
Well, here's what I'll say. I think that both running backs, I'll put this on the board right now, both of these running backs will outscore Aaron Jones this week.
Wow. My friend, go back to Twitter and hang out in that cesspool.
Yeah, seriously.
That was mean.
I'll tell you what, both of these running backs.
Exactly. That's why I said it. I mean,
I really feel like.
I'm sorry. The best part is, like, I think one person saw a response, and I replied to that response.
That's tough.
Saying, like, hey, Field, like, thank you for, I followed your advice on Aaron Jones, and I started him, and now my wife is leaving me. And I replied, and I was like, I'm so sorry for your loss. And now other people have started to reply. They feel like my marriage is in shambles. So I apologize. I will not foot the bill for divorce lawyers. I'm sorry that people are having a tough time right now. It's, I'm sorry for Aaron Jones. I didn't mean to. I didn't think he would have 1.4 fantasy points tonight.
Here's the thing.
Last night.
I am starting Jaylen Warren if I'm starting one of them over Najee Harris, and here's the reason.
Najee Harris.
Going
to be in your DMs.
It's because through 3 games, Jaylen Warren has 16 targets, and Najee has 6. There is 0 passing game usage, and it's not like Najee is getting goal line usage right now because neither one of them are getting goal line usage. Yeah. Like, it kind of eliminates that from my thought process. So this week, if I'm diving in, like, I just want the guy that's catching passes because Najee looks so inefficient.
Yeah, I've never felt less excited about a board bet, but do you want to just board bet these two because we need a board bet for this week?
You know what? Let's do it. Why not?
Why not? What do you think, Mike?
Like,
you want to be in this or no?
I'll do it.
Do you want to be in or no?
Yeah, I was going to give some stats why I'm not as hopeful on Warren, but I'm not going to do that now if we're doing a board bet.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, I'm on the Najee side. I say Najee. You want to join me on this one, Mike? Or no? Okay. I say Najee Harris outscores Jaylen Warren in week 4.
I say Jaylen Warren outscores Najee Harris in week 4.
Put it on the board. Put it on the board.
All right. So, so just for the people listening, since that's who we're serving here, under 13 fantasy points in every game so far. He's been in the 8 to 11 touch range in every game.
Are you talking about Najee or are you talking about Jaylen?
I'm talking about Warren.
Oh, okay. What about Najee? Has Najee been under 13 points
he's
in every
been under
game?
6.5.
Okay.
But the point of that was just like neither of them are good.
Neither one of them
are hard
to
really hype either one up.
Oh, man.
I'll tell you what. I've been hearing some hype around this Tutu Atwell kid. You trust in him with Matthew Stafford, understanding that he doesn't get the kind of volume that we see from Puka Nacua, but like he is certainly a deep shot that Matthew likes here, Field.
He keeps getting opportunities, and this Colts secondary is super inexperienced. So I need to be higher on Tutu Atwell than I am right now. Mike Clay is the only smart one here. He's got him as wide receiver 28, but yeah.
That might be low.
Really? You think so?
Well, he's 14th this season.
He's been excellent.
Yeah.
He has been excellent. And he is totally like, he's been one of the better waiver wire ads so far this season. I'm impressed by Tutu Atwell. I give the Rams a ton of credit here, and the player as well, because basically 2 full lost seasons for Tutu Atwell. How many guys are virtual non-factors for 2? Is it 3 seasons in?
No, I think this is his third season. So he's on the, the trajectory here is Tyler Boyd. Same thing.
There you go.
He was a healthy scratch at times his second year and ended up panning out as one of the better slot receivers in the NFL.
Do you know who was bad early in his career as well? And it feels crazy to say this now. Devontae Adams used to be bad.
That's a good call. Yeah.
Like, I don't think he was actually bad, but like Packers fans, I shouldn't say Packers fans. People that watch the games were like, what is going on with this guy?
You're right. He had a lot of drops and stuff.
A far cry from where we are right now when the man is one of the best players on the planet. Just a reminder that not everybody is like, Bijan Robinson, where the second they become a player in the NFL, they just absolutely mash it.
Crush it.
Yeah, I'm with you. By the way, Atwell in the 15 to 18 fantasy point range in all 3 games so far this season. The Colts struggling against receivers so far. So it is a good matchup. He's seen a lot of volume. Offense is
He's
playing
like
well
Jaylen
enough.
Warren plus Najee Harris combined in one player.
Yeah, but
that plays receiver and weighs like 150 pounds.
I will say this, though. This is week 4, which means potentially Cooper Kupp back in week 5. This could be the last game of the Nakua Atwell show here. We'll see.
I think the Nakua show continues. I think there's still several seasons left. Atwell might be the odd man out. Sounds like there's a chance. We talked about this yesterday. A chance on Cooper Kupp. Wouldn't guarantee it for week 5 by any stretch, but perhaps a chance. I feel like my big takeaway, Mike, from yesterday, from the comments from Sean McVay on Wednesday, was that like the tone sounds pretty good, right? Like it didn't sound like we were going to wait until week 10 to see Cooper Kupp. It seems like we could see him over the next couple or maybe 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, we should mention it's not just Kupp. It's all the guys that started on PUP or.
Yep, we got guys like Jonathan Taylor certainly on that list as well.
Week 5 is a big one.
Yep.
Very big one. All right, we got one mailbag question here that we're going to dive into.
Okay, I'm ready for
from
this.
our dude Jake Chavez. Says, I just got offered Breece Hall for DeAndre Swift straight up. While hesitating for a second, I ultimately pulled the trigger. For whatever reason, the others in my league are attacking me as if I am completely outlandish for accepting that trade. Can you please let the rest of my league know if you would have also done this deal and why it makes sense for the rest of the season?
At least he didn't trade for Aaron Jones before last night's game. Am I right?
Yikes.
High five.
Wow. Honestly, like, is there any way to eject you from this chair right now?
I'm just reading your mentions.
Again?
I've been reading nothing. Like my timeline is ruined. This is your fault. It's like I actually muted that conversation this morning because it was just so many replies of people just destroying you.
I was just speaking on your behalf when I said to start Aaron Jones.
I mean, yeah, we probably all ranked him in the same range.
I mean, it was we all had him.
It was tough. Look,
I
I started Christian Watson in one league last night, and I got very lucky that he scored a touchdown.
Yeah, you got
2 with a touchdown.
Yeah, we got lucky. But anyway,
I would prefer. So the question is, would you prefer Breece Hall or DeAndre Swift? Jake acquired Breece Hall for the rest of the season.
It's not even like advice. It's just, is this egregious? I think the answer is no. It's not.
I don't think it's egregious. No, I think this is one of those things that if you state it like definitively in week 4, like, oh my God, you absolutely fleeced this person with DeAndre Swift. How would this trade look after week 1 of the regular season when DeAndre Swift was an accessory for the Eagles in their week 1 win over the Patriots? Meanwhile, Breece Hall was the best offensive player on the field in a game against the Buffalo Bills that the Jets won. So I don't think it's a fleecing. I think these players, you're very optimistic that Breece Hall will eventually get close to 100%. And Mike has mentioned this several times. The Jets' schedule will soften up a little bit defensively. Like they will not be playing the Bills and the Patriots and the Cowboys and the Chiefs every 4 games for the rest of the year. I do think there is some optimism for Breece Hall. And I think that the downside is like fairly comparable for both of them, right? Because while Swift's offense is excellent and the offensive line is great, I don't know, like it's also possible because of the fact that Kenneth Gainwell won the job going into the season that Swift could be once again relegated to a smaller role. I think it's a lower likelihood of that than Breece Hall in this Jets offense continuing to stink all season, but it's at least in play. I don't think it's a terrible trade.
Yeah, and does Swift hold up in this role? This is a guy that's never had this sort of workload. He's always missed games. He's never had a season where he's been fully healthy. So there's reasons why you might say, you know what, I'm going to move. I'm essentially sell high on DeAndre Swift. If that's what you're doing here, and you're going to say, all right, Breece Hall played a season 9 snaps last week. The schedule will be easier as this ramps up. He could potentially be a league winner in the second half. If that's your target here, it makes perfect sense. So I think it could prove to be a savvy move. It's a little risky. fine. I'm totally fine with it. But again, the question is this like an egregious move that ruins the league and everyone's upset? No, it should not upset anyone. That's a viable strategy. He has a plan in mind, and I think it's fine.
More questions, field@fantasyfocus.org. That's field@fantasyfocus.org.
So I mentioned how many yards before first contact DeAndre Swift had.
Okay.
Do you guys know where Breece Hall is at this season?
I'm going to guess at the other end of the spectrum.
0.7.
4.69.
What? That high?
You know what, though?
Is it because of that one long run that he had?
Untouched run where that can really skew the numbers that early in the season? Because he had the 81-yard run?
And he wasn't touched until he basically got tackled out of bounds.
Right. So it's like, if you get 81
it's
and
like
you've
80
got
yards before first
us,
contact, did a lot. Yeah. Hey, I just said numbers. Numbers never lie.
No, they don't.
Clay. All right, Daniel Dopp, Mike Clay, and Field Yates back here on Fantasy Focus Football, and we are diving into our starts of the week.
Yep.
Field Yates, we're talking about guys that are flex plays, not obvious starts, guys that you can throw into your flex roster. Who is it that you want to talk about this week?
I got a feeling on Adam Thielen. How about this? Adam Thielen, the old man, the old hat who gets the job done.
33-year-old user.
How would you describe him in your age scale? Is he?
He's in the 99th percentile of old.
Yeah. Like extremely old.
Yeah, like how many? There's like 3 30-plus-year-old receivers in the league and that are like playing, like starting.
Okay.
And he's on the list. It's like
He's
him
one of them.
Like he's certainly the oldest, right?
Yeah.
It would be like Hopkins is like 31.
Yeah.
Keenan Allen is 30.
Keenan Allen's
31.
31.
There you go. That's probably it, right?
That's like it.
Not
that are
many
fantasy
more
relevant.
beyond
Yeah.
that. Brandon Cobb, he's probably up.
Yeah,
there.
he's
Different
a
category for
situational
sure.
sort of guy.
Yeah.
Not playing, not a top 10 receiver so far this season.
Which is exactly what is Adam Thielen now in the top 10?
Yeah, I think he's sixth. Yeah,
That's absurd. Now, one or two big games. One big game can really influence that. But
two. Yeah, he said two good ones.
Two good games for Adam Thielen, and Bryce Young expected back this week. Don't know if the quarterback really matters as far as Adam Thielen's output, but a great matchup.
Yes.
This Vikings defense
Revenge
looks
game.
a lot like the one that Adam Thielen practiced against last year, which could not stop anybody. So great opportunity, both in terms of the volume and the matchup here for Adam Thielen. I'm sure there'll be a lot of emotions on Sunday. There will be no better feeling for Adam Thielen than finding the end zone. So give me Adam Thielen as my start of the week.
Love that.
like it.
Mike, who do you have?
All right, so I'm going to go with Jahan Dotson, actually. I'm going down the ranks a little bit here, feeling good about this because I think Darius Slay will shadow Terry McLaurin in this game as he did in both games last year. Now, Terry McLaurin had 2 of his better games, actually. For a long time, Slay had his number last year. That was not the case. It's been a slow start for Dotson, but he is playing 88% of the snaps. He has 16 targets in 3 games so far. Hasn't scored yet. I thought this was interesting. His average depth of target has basically been cut in half from last year. They're trying to manufacture more touches. Yeah. It's not just situational deep threats. So that's interesting. But also, James Bradbury, we saw this switch for Philly. Big switch. James Bradbury not playing the perimeter now.
Yeah,
with Devontae Maddox on IR. He moved to the slot. And enter Josh Jobe, which, interesting, has local ties from Miami, is Josh Jobe. He went to Cheshire Academy, which is my hometown up here.
Yeah.
Went to high school at Cheshire Academy in Cheshire, and for 4 years, and then went to Alabama and played there. And now he's went undrafted. He's with the Eagles, and he's starting now for the Eagles. So
do you think that will continue? Or do you think that James Bradbury moving inside last week was a byproduct of the idea that Chris Godwin might be in there more?
Well, Godwin is playing outside, though.
I know, it's a little bit of inside and outside.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
He's inside and outside because they're using Trey Palmer a lot and Tompkins. It depends who's on the field. I don't know. I did think about that as well. But I think they're just more comfortable with Jobe outside, and he's their third best corner, and then Bradbury's inside. Also, you have Curtis Samuel as well, so I don't know who you're more afraid of. Probably Dotson. But,
I would think Dotson. Yeah,
but
great. But that's a deep cut right there. I respect it.
How about that one,
Dotson's
right?
not been good so far this season.
I just keep hearing you say Jobe, and I'm just thinking about Arrested Development over and over and over again. And it's like, I made a terrible choice.
How about you, Daniel?
I'm going to go with Nico Collins here, guys.
A bounce back. All right,
I
like
bounce back for Nico Collins. Here's part of it. They're taking on the Steelers. You know what the Steelers do well? They get after the quarterback very quickly. Yeah. I'm looking at ways where it's probably not going to be Tank Dell that I think has as many targets in this game because he's the guy that's getting the deep PPR points. I like Nico as someone that hopefully be able to get the ball out quickly. And honestly, I think you can start any of these 3 Texans wide receivers. Robert Woods, Tank Dell, and Nico Collins. All 3 of them are getting volume here. All 3 of them have 15 receptions on the season. That
is balance right there.
It really is. So if I'm going to grab one, I like Nico as a bounce back because he's the guy I think is the talented one as a big 6'4" guy in this offense. But
wow, Tank Dell not talented.
I think Dell is
Courtesy
talented.
of-
He's also 5'8". Like there is a part where it's like between those two things, it's like I like the big guy here.
I do love the Steelers defense, though. It's
They're
like
good.
maybe the top defense of the week. Because the Texans, every time I turn, it's another offensive line injury. It's wild right
This
now.
will be huge to see what CJ Stroud does this week against a tough Steelers defense because he has looked really good through 3 weeks. And if he does it again here, I think we're going to start feeling like CJ Stroud might be
That'll
the
be
real
a
deal.
Monday headline that we were talking about on Friday.
Absolutely.
Have you watched the Squirrel Report yet, Mike?
This week's, I have not seen this week's. I wasn't on it, so it's not as much of a priority as
Get
usual. But
on it.
We had a fun one this week.
Go check
Oh,
out
as
the Squirrel
opposed to
Report
last
right
week when
now.
I was on it.
Go check out. The last
That
week
was
was
okay.
fun.
I've seen better.
We did a fun song called "Throw Me Some TDs." Travis's version. It's a lot of fun. So go check that out. We love you guys. Good luck here this week. We'll see you in week 5.
Bye.
Hey, you didn't do Taylor jokes with me. I wrote a Taylor article.
I know it was so.
You were so far ahead of the curve, Mike.
I was, right? I was out in front of that. I knew she'd be in 20 plus stadiums this year.
That's what it was.
Yeah, see?